Hello everyone, welcome to ListenABLE, a podcast where two good mates, Dylan Alcott and Angus O'Loughlin, that's me, get to sit in a room together and chat with some amazing people representing disability with lived experience.
Angus O'Loughlin, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Got a bit of a style change up you're rocking at the moment.
Yes, I had a conversation with a comedian called Reese Nicholson.
I know Reese,
Yep.
funny man.
So Reese Nicholson and I had a very long discussion about my style. It could be my way of having somewhat of a midlife crisis.
He said your style's no good.
No, we just discussed it because I'm 37 years old, I've got two kids, and I still shop at General Pants.
That is so good, and it's so... Hey, shout out to General Pants,
Shout
big
out
fans of the
GP.
podcast, if you want to sponsor us. But
Of course.
I think I moved on from General Pants when I was 24,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 34. I do, disclaimer, I do get free clothes off my friends at Nike, so
That's true.
I am lucky. But yeah, I actually don't mind that you're moving on from General Pants, but you've got hair shorter and a moustache.
Yes, that is true. Hair shorter and a mustache. But I am just in between my midlife crisis of trying to figure out who I am. But I do not matter, Dylan.
What's next, Harley?
No, I just shopped. I just got I changed my basics. So I used to use this brand called Black Noise White Rain, and now I've changed over to just Uniqlo basics. I've got some stretchy Uniqlo pleated pants on today.
This is the
You asked.
daddest chat ever.
All right, let's let our incredible guests waiting online introduce themselves.
I just want to start by confirming, Angus, that you are an absolutely beautiful man. Very well dressed today.
So much, Carly.
Somebody's floating already. It's just started.
You don't know the text that we've shared.
Okay.
But my name is Carly Salmon, pronouns she, her. And I actually knew this was coming. And when I thought about how I would describe myself, I got quite overwhelmed in that I wouldn't even know where to begin. I thought, do you share your favourite colour? Mine being green. I love potatoes. But knowing what this podcast is about, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 18 months old. And I was actually told, or my parents were told at that point, that it was very unlikely that I'd be able to participate in sport. Those medical professionals, knowing that my family were pretty active, so gave them a pretty grim outlook for me. And I actually grew up in a place called Wagga Wagga, where at the time there wasn't a whole lot to do other than play sport. And as I said, my family were pretty active and involved in lots of different sports. So, wasn't a great diagnosis for them. But I guess since that time, I have found great joy in proving those medical professionals wrong. I've represented my country in a few different sports. I've represented in athletics as a sprinter. I'm currently playing sitting volleyball. And also the captain of the Para Matildas football team. And then alongside sport, I've just finished up as a primary school PE teacher and stepped into a high performance para pathways team, because ultimately I'm just so passionate about making sure that everyone has the opportunity to reap the benefits of being active and participating in sport. So that's me in a nutshell.
A lot to break down there.
What are we even doing here? That's just full keynote.
Full
specs.
keynote there. Thank you.
Don't
I
even
think
need
the
questions.
most important thing, I don't want to jump in,
No,
but there was
I've
one
got-
thing that really stuck out for me.
Oh, me too. What are you going to go with?
Favourite colour?
No, mine is. What's your favourite form of potatoes?
Ooh.
I was really hoping that you would ask that question. It's absolutely a brilliant one. Thank you for asking. I absolutely love mashed potatoes,
Ooh,
particularly at a pub.
good call.
Great intro, Carly, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here, and we do have a lot to unpack. First of all, I want to start off with, can you describe, Carly, outside of sport, what do the students or your ex-PE students see when Miss Salmon walks into the classroom?
They see an absolute goofball that cannot sit still. So when I went into teaching, I was actually a year 2 teacher. And, I really love working with kids. But ultimately, after a couple of years, I just went to my principal and said, look, I love this school. I love working with kids, but I just cannot work in a classroom because growing up, going, being a in primary school myself, I was an absolute pest. I couldn't sit still, couldn't concentrate, just didn't want to be in the classroom, wanted to be outdoors, wanted to be running around. So having to force kids to do that, and to be in a classroom and listen to me talk all day, I was not really interested in doing that anymore. So thankfully, my principal was amazing and essentially created this PE role. It's not really common to have a PE specialist within a primary school, but thankfully wanted to keep me in the system. So the kids just see a very competitive Miss Salmon who loves whipping their butts in sport for sure.
How do the kids respond to the fact that you have disability? Have you had any moments that were tough, or do they kind of see past it and just see who you are?
Yeah, good question. I often, explain my disability. I start by explaining that, more recently I play for the Para Matildas because I'm often away traveling with sport. And so, have explained that I play in the Para Matildas soccer team. And I go to explain the para part, but once they hear that I don't play with Sam Kerr, they're not interested at all. Uh, they don't want to hear any more about it. But I have done, I do a few programs through the Australian Institute of Sport where I travel to schools and essentially share my story. And even more recently, had a colleague invite me into a school where she's recently started because she had a student with cerebral palsy who's in year 2 and really struggling to come to terms with that. He's starting to realize that he can't keep up. So I think those experiences have been really helpful in trying to define my disability for kids because it's pretty tricky to understand. I still don't really understand what cerebral palsy is because it affects people so differently, and it continues to throw challenges at me every day. But I essentially explain it to kids as when I was in mum's stomach. I have a twin sister, so there were 2 of us in mum's tummy, and there wasn't enough oxygen for the 2 of us. So I like to think of my twin as a bit of a hog. She took up all of the oxygen, which essentially just caused some damage on my brain. And the part of my brain that is damaged is the part that controls the movement on the left side of my body. So now I'm not able to move as effectively on that side. I love breaking it down to the kids like that and kind of emphasizing that's why for me, they might see me with a little bit of a limp, but, for other people, it's just very dependent on where that damage is as to, how it affects them. You might see people in a wheelchair or you might see people that can't verbally communicate. So, it's interesting to break it down to them like that. And I think it's really important to do that because as a kid, they're so curious. And once they know what a disability is, I think they're a lot more kinder and patient with those around them.
Yeah, I always just say I'm lazy when a kid asks me. Yeah, I'm just lazy.
To be fair, you are still lazy.
I guess, mate, I work hard. Carly, just to confirm then, so you have your cerebral palsy affects your left arm and your left leg, is that right? And then on the right side, you're non-disabled as such?
My brain scan technically shows that the cerebral palsy impacts essentially my whole body.
Okay.
The damage is big enough. But for me, I only really notice it in my left leg. It is so much tighter than the rest of my body. But if I'm particularly fatigued or cold, which is quite common in Canberra, it does start to show up in all the limbs in my body.
For anybody who maybe has CP or a disability, maybe they're a youngster, a 10-year-old with a podcast, listen to a podcast on the bus on the way in or to school, or maybe a parent with a kid with disability, kind of spoke about that child that you're sort of talking to or mentoring through the same process that you went through. Can you tell us what it was like to at that realization point of when you discovered that you were falling, and I'm trying to use inverted commas here, but falling behind physically to your classmates, and what that actually did for you, not obviously physically, but mentally, because, school's pretty tough. And if you can't keep up, running away from the 10-0, on the oval, then, people might start to, realize those differences.
What's a 10-0?
10-0, tennis ball. Piff and the 10-0.
That is, no one uses that language. Do you ever heard that before, Carly?
I have not, but I'm glad I know now.
There'll be a poll on Instagram. Have you ever piffed a 10-0?
Hey, Dill, do you want to go down to Rod Laver and have a hit of the 10-0?
Oh, you actually have dealt with a lot of tennis balls.
What are you talking about? No one has ever said.
I was actually about to say, what would you know about my childhood, but you've actually hit a fair few 10-0s.
Let's go play some 10-0. What? That is not a thing.
We'll check that out.
All right.
I would also love to make you better, make you feel better and tell you that everyone uses that term, but definitely one I have not heard before.
Yeah, you're out.
Well, that's a small pool. We'll find out
Not
later
even
on.
in the classrooms. Yeah, but on that question, I think for me, it started to hit me towards the end of primary school when I actually started to try and get selected for team sports. And I was ridiculously active. I was never interested in sitting down and doing any form of work or watching TV or anything. You would always find me out the back playing all different types of sports. And so naturally, I just thought that I would be quite competitive. And yeah, when I went to get picked in those teams, the teachers didn't even look twice at me. And even in athletics carnivals, where it came time to pick teams for relays, I was not even looked at for that. And so, I think that is when I started to realize. And I think for me, even harder having a twin sister, that comparison was always there, and she is very lazy in comparison to me. She would hate me saying that. But I think that I worked a lot harder than her, and she was just naturally quite good at sport. And so therefore, got picked a lot over me. And yeah, it was really, really challenging. I was just desperate to fit in and keep up. And even when I was in primary school, it was quite common for the boys to be on the oval playing sport and girls to be sitting down having a chat. And that landscape has definitely changed. But when I was in primary school, all I wanted to do was play with the boys, and they weren't interested in having someone who couldn't keep up with them. So it was very, very difficult. Even as a young kid, I didn't miss a beat. Mum said I was very aware of everything that was happening around me. So I definitely feel for students coming through who have any type of difference and feel like they can't keep up, for sure.
Was there any moment where that flipped for you? You seem like a person who's proud of their disability these days. Was there a specific moment when you realised that your disability was unique and as part of you, and you started to kind of come to terms with it and be proud of that?
Yeah, it was actually, so my older sister has Down syndrome, and a teacher's aide of hers at school suggested that she go to an athletics carnival in Sydney because they were putting on a race for people with disabilities. And so my mum thought that if my sister Jess was going, that I could also tag along. And at that athletics carnival in Sydney was quite funny. Jess started the race and had absolutely no idea what was going on. She thought that everyone was cheering for her, so she just walked down the straight waving at everybody. But it was at that competition that I did a few races actually, and discovered that I was actually pretty decent as a sprinter. And it also just opened my eyes to a whole new world because I was competing against other people with disabilities. And yeah, it was then that I started to realize that in that environment I could be competitive, and also that, I'd found a new community of people that had all different types of disabilities. But I think that was the real moment for me where I started to almost see my disability as a strength.
So at the age of 14 or 13 or 14, you then went on to represent Australia in athletics. Was it that track event that you were spotted and someone said, I'd love to do some coaching with you and see how far we can take this thing? Or how did you get to that point? Where's that jump?
Yeah, it was a bit of a journey. So I started in athletics as something called a T38. So the classification system in disability sports is pretty complicated. But as a T38, it essentially meant that I was in the most mild class for people with cerebral palsy. And so everyone who was competing in that class were very mildly impaired, which meant that essentially they were pretty competitive, pretty fast. And then a couple years later, I got reclassified and I jumped all the way down to being in a class that was considered the most severely impaired before you go into the wheelchair categories. And so essentially, it meant that my times in that classification were pretty competitive on an international stage. So as soon as I got classified and people from Athletics Australia caught wind, they were pretty excited. So things went from 0 to 100 quite quickly. I was competing and was fairly average, and then went down to a class where, I was considered to be pretty good on an international stage. So at 13 years old, only a few months after that classification change, got picked to go and represent Australia at the Athletics World Champs in France. So, a bit of a roller coaster ride for sure.
Crazy.
How far did you get with athletics, and when did you make the decision to switch to the world game, football?
Really interesting. So with that athletics journey, I actually started as a long jumper and absolutely loved doing the long jump. That was my real passion in that sport. But in athletics, because there are so many different classes of disability, they can't have everybody doing all of the athletics events. That would make the Paralympics go forever. And so as a T38, long jump was an event that I could do, but as a T35, it wasn't an event. The only events I could choose from were the 100 meters, 200 meters, and the shot put. And so I was quite competitive as a sprinter, and because I could do that internationally, I jumped on board and trained for that for just over 10 years. But ultimately, I didn't start athletics because sprinting was a passion of mine. I have to say, running in a straight line is not that exciting. And so I remember initially once, Athletics Australia had scouted me, I did question whether it was something I wanted to do because when you sign a contract and you start getting paid for a sport, they are pretty set on you just focusing on that sport and not doing anything else. And initially I really struggled with that because, as I've said, I just absolutely love all different types of sport. So initially really struggled with that. They actually sent me to a psychologist at the AIS when I was starting to question it, and they diagnosed me with mild depression at that point. And I think Athletics Australia kind of jumped on that and thought that that diagnosis meant that I was just going through a phase of not really enjoying anything. But, thankfully, even with that, I got a lot of support, and that helped me stay in the sport for, as I said, over 10 years. And I met some amazing people in that sport and traveled around the world. So I wouldn't take any of it back, but it definitely got to a point where I realized that it wasn't a phase. It wasn't my mental health. It just ultimately wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. So decided to take a step back a few years ago and just go back to mucking around in team sports and having fun, which was amazing. I definitely found a love of sport again.
Just mucking around, being the captain of the Para Matildas. Is that just mucking around? Is it? That sounds pretty legit.
That definitely was not the plan. Soccer was one of those sports that that I found and just started doing socially. And yeah, essentially similar to Athletics Australia, got scouted pretty quickly, which I'm really, really grateful for. But yeah, it definitely was not the initial plan.
So, where does that leadership come from? Going from individual sports, where the only person who can judge their own preparation and their results is you. Obviously, you've got a coaching team who are, dependent on those results as well, but it's all you. Then where does that mentality that you want to go into team sports come from, and the leadership shown to be chosen as co-captain?
Really good question. I'm not really sure. I think even though athletics is an individual sport, there's still a really strong team environment. And I grew up with some incredible people in that world. Kurt Fernley is one who comes to mind, who um, uh, just being one, but
Haven't heard of him.
I think he was yeah, no. I think he was very mindful that it is a very individual world, but always wanted to make sure that that team culture was there. And when I was coming through, there were quite a few young athletes as well. So he really took me under his wing. And there are a lot of people like that in the world. And it made my experience in athletics so much better because there was still a lot I was struggling with. And so I think it was people like that who made my experience in sports so much better. And I learnt a lot from him. And yeah, I would just the thought that I can now do the same for other athletes, and I now have the platform and the role to do that has been absolutely amazing.
I love that. Yeah, he's a bloody ledge, Kurt. And you're so right. Like, I learnt so much. I played tennis and basketball as a kid, but I didn't train as hard as I thought I was training hard. And then I went to play basketball in the Paralympics, and I was like, oh my God, this is how you train, because you don't want to let your teammates down. And there's elder leaders who are older than me, like Brad Ness, our captain, and others. And then I went back to tennis, and I was like, oh, I know what I have to do. And that's why I had success in tennis. Like, they really played a massive role together. Football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, has obviously blown up here in Australia, especially women's football. How much of an impact has the increase in profile of the Matildas, had on the Para Matildas? Have you seen any trickle down effect? Do you have any relationship with them? How do they get involved in your program?
Yeah, the Matildas have been absolutely phenomenal in our journey. Obviously, overall, the football hype in Australia since the World Cup has been huge. I think football wasn't a very well known or popular sport prior to that in the female space, whereas that's completely changed. And I think that has shown um, any female that there is a pathway for them in football, but equally people with the disability too. The ParaMatildas were only established about 3 years ago, so not long before the World Cup, but I think it was perfectly timed because, people with females with a disability can now see that football is a pathway for them. And we're also extremely lucky that a lot of brands and people who sponsor the Matildas are equally happy to support us as well. So we've definitely benefited a lot from the Matildas for sure.
Carly, you mentioned your platform and now being in a position to sort of help those coming up, like you had those opportunities before you. Sport helped you embrace your disability, obviously, as we've heard, but can you share a moment where you personally felt proud of your disability that wasn't related to football or athletics?
Yeah, really interesting. I think for me, going back to a long time ago, I actually read a letter from my mum it was a personal letter that she wrote. And I say letter, but it was probably more of a reflection to herself. And it was essentially almost her grieving about straight after my diagnosis. And I'd obviously, I have an older sister with Down syndrome. And so I couldn't even imagine being a parent. She has 4 kids. She had 4 girls under the age of 4, but also two of those girls being diagnosed with disabilities. And so I think, yeah, at that time she was feeling pretty flat. But when I read that letter, I just stumbled across it. She didn't mean for me to read it. I think I must have been 8 years old. So as an 8-year-old reading that, I viewed it at the time as she was really disappointed, and didn't like the fact that she had 2 kids with a disability, and essentially that I was going to make her life really hard. I will preface that I've since had a conversation with Mum only a few years ago. I actually told her that I came across that letter and we were able to sit and talk through it. And I've since learnt that that was not what she was saying at all. It was very much she thought that she had done something wrong, and it was kind of the world punishing her for it, which was an interesting perspective to now have. But as a kid, that was really, really damaging. And I think, from reading that, I have I was absolutely destroyed. And my mission from that point was to prove that, having a disability wasn't a bad thing. But equally, I was so desperate to fit in. And, I essentially became an absolute people pleaser. So yeah, I think a lot of those things came from that letter, but and there was definitely an undertone as well of, she's right, this really, really sucks. But I think uh, through sport I have found so many positives from having a disability, because that's a platform where it can really highlight your strengths rather than your weaknesses. But I think more recently, um, going into schools and sharing my story and the life that I've lived having a disability, and seeing kids even without a disability, putting up their hands and saying, I'm also disabled and I'm also different, like I have glasses and that person doesn't, or I have darker skin and that person doesn't. And even the school that I went to quite recently, and the there was a boy with cerebral palsy who was absolutely in denial, hadn't shared that with anyone. And then after sharing my story, he put up his hand and he said, Carly, I have a statement, not a question. And I said, okay, no worries. And he said, I have cerebral palsy, and that his teacher absolutely broke down, because he said it was such a massive smile on his face. And, I reflected on myself after reading that letter, and that was the last thing I probably would have shared with people. So, yeah, I think it's been a big journey coming to terms with my disability. But, being able to proudly to share that that's what I have, and, you know, I'm super proud.
Beautiful story.
That's great.
That's a great story.
Thanks for sharing, Carly.
You'll be able to see that on the ListenABLE socials,
Yeah,
I'm assuming, because
I
that
was
was bloody
just
beautiful.
thinking
I was just
flip
staring
that.
at you. I was like, wow, that is a beautiful story.
Yeah,
I love that.
I appreciate that.
So just looking ahead now, Carly, so the Para Matildas, what's the next step? Where are you guys going?
Also, who's the best in the world? Who do we hate?
Yeah.
Give us the rundown
Give
of
us
where
some villains.
the Para Matildas are at. Is it Brazil? Is
We
it
hate the
Argentina?
USA.
Do we want to smash Germany? USA? Who's the leader and who are we coming for?
Oh, it's USA all the way. So we are technically ranked number 1 in the world. We have a massive rivalry with the US. So they won the first World Cup, and then 2 years later, so it would have been last year, we finally pipped them and became number 1. We were the world champs. We've just recently returned from a competition in England where we were in the final with them again. And unfortunately, they did beat us. So it's the competition is still certainly real. So whilst we are technically ranked number 1 in the world, the US cannot be underrated. So that will be our goal for the next couple of years. Any chance that we have to come up against the US, yeah, we would love to absolutely annihilate them.
Love that. And yes, enjoy it while it's you in America, because some of the other countries are learning that the Paralympics is pretty good. And I reckon there'd be a few South American teams in that hopefully can get some funding and then, create a groundswell of competition, because that's what you end up wanting. Also got to give a shout out to the Pararoos as well, the men's CP football team. Did I get that right, Carly?
You're all over it.
Yeah, but they're definitely not coming World Championships. So shout out to the Para Matildas.
All right, time for the Ball of Uncomfortable, Carly. This is where we ask you a question sent in by the audience, or maybe Dylan and I have kept a spicy question for the end. The hope is we ask you this question to make people feel less uncomfortable when seeing you, and maybe get rid of some of those questions you get asked 20 or 30 times when you go to do a keynote or something like that.
I'll go first.
Okay.
You represent Australia in both athletics and football, but parasport often gets less funding and coverage than mainstream sport. Does that ever make you angry? And do you ever feel your achievements are devalued because of your disability? It's a good one when you compare it to the non-disabled Matildas.
Yeah.
One thing you should know about me is I have absolutely no anger within my body. But I would, rather than anger, I would definitely say disappointment. I would love to see that change. I just feel like parasport is so underestimated. The athletes within all Paralympic sports are absolutely incredible. The work they put in behind the scenes is absolutely unreal. So, I definitely think that that should change. I would love to see the support shift. I think, it's improved over the last few years, and I think with the Para Uplift, the government's given Paralympic sports a whole lot of new funding between now and the 2032 Paralympic Games. So I'm really hoping that will help show the Australian community that, we're worth investing.
Do have to give a shout out to government, all sides of politics, to be honest, because they did back this. So all parasports got an injection of funds. Carly, yourself sounds like you're a leader in that. You said you're doing some work in it. So legitimately, I'm talking proper funds where people can, there's only a handful of Paralympic athletes. My hand is up for those who can't see me who, are very lucky to be mainstream and to have, make a professional career out of it. A lot of people work jobs and things like that. So it eliminates some of that, especially leading up to Brisbane 2032. And with people like Carly leading that, it's awesome to see. So yeah, we love that.
Carly, that wraps up your time on ListenABLE. But before we go, we would love to give you the plug. You've got this platform. What's your Instagram? What's up next? When are the Para Matildas playing next?
Oh, many things to plug. You can find me on Instagram by just searching my name, but I would definitely love if you could give the ParaMatildas a follow on any social media platforms.
You know what? I'm doing that right now. I don't
Here we
think
go.
I don't think I follow the ParaMatildas, and I'm doing it.
Big DA, going for it.
I would definitely recommend their content is good value. They're definitely
You have
those girls are
12,000
absolutely-
followers.
Ooh, yeah, we're getting
ParaMatildas have
there.
12,000. That's
Definitely.
sick.
That's great.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people working behind the scenes to get us there. So, those girls are absolutely incredible, really good value. So I would definitely recommend getting behind them for sure. And equally, sitting volleyball will kill me. Sitting volleyball will kill me if I don't give them a shout out as well. Sitting volleyball is a very new Paralympic sport within Australia. The most ridiculous sport I've ever taken part in, but I absolutely love it. So I would definitely recommend watching that space as well.
All three links are below in the show notes, so just one click away from getting behind Carly Salmon, the ParaMatildas, and, of course, sitting volleyball. Thank you so much for your time. You're an absolute weapon. We loved having you, and, keep going on, and we can't wait to support you at the next World Championships. Screw the USA. Let's go, Oz.
Good on you, Carly.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.